Hey everybody, this is a piece from The Fate of the Russian Revolution, Lost Texts of Critical Marxism, Volume 1, edited by Sean Matt Gomna. It's an appendix from the book. It's titled At the Turning Point of the 20th Century, Germany 1933, by Max Shachtman. This is originally from The Militant, February and March 1933, so it's a lot earlier than a lot of the texts that I've been reading from this book. The footnote says, the Reichsbanner was the Social Democratic Party's defense militia. So here we go. Section 1. President von Hindenburg, the victorious candidate of the socialist, quote, President von Hindenburg, the victorious candidate of the socialist, quote, Iron Front, end quote, the, quote, bulwark of the Republic against fascism, end quote, has finally appointed Hitler to the chancellorship of the Reich. The fact that Hindenburg, who was undoubtedly hostile to Hitler, even if not in a fundamentally class sense, finally called upon the fascist leader to take over the government, is eloquent testimony to the desperation of the German bourgeoisie. Capitalism in its, quote, normal state never does more than keep its fascist hordes in reserve. The German ruling class knows that the seizure of power by the brown-shirted bandits, especially in a country with a well-organized and socialistically schooled working class, means civil war and the consequent disruption of the economic and political life of the country, at least until the issue of the struggle is decided. The German bourgeoisie has gone to all conceivable lengths to avoid the heavy expenses of a civil war. It has turned over the government to social democrats. It has drawn them into bourgeois coalitions. It has sought to preserve an equilibrium with the aid of the Brüning party of ultramontanism. I don't really know what that means. Let's look that up. According to Wikipedia, ultramontanism is a clerical political concept within the Catholic Church that places strong emphasis on the prerogatives and powers of the Pope. Ultramontanism contrasts with Galicianism, the belief that popular civil authority, often represented by the monarch or state's authority over the Church, is comparable to that of the Pope. Back to the text. The German bourgeoisie has gone to all conceivable lengths to avoid the heavy expenses of a civil war. It has turned over the government to social democrats. It has drawn them into bourgeois coalitions. It has sought to preserve an equilibrium with the aid of the Brüning party of ultramontanism. It has resorted to the Bonapartist regimes of Papen and von Schleicher. But none of these expedients has enabled it to emerge from the profound crisis undermining its domination, the crisis which has driven hundreds of thousands of workers to the support of the Party of Social Revolution. For just as the bourgeoisie finds it impossible to rule in the old way, the masses refuse to live in the old way. That is why the bourgeoisie has been forced to resort to the desperate expedient of fascism! Hitler in power means the commencement of the civil war in Germany. It is entirely unthinkable that the German working class, million strong, trained in the school of the class struggle for years, having at its head the most powerful communist party in the world outside of the Soviet Union, will permit the Nazi assassins to remain in power without a violent struggle. It is entirely unthinkable that Hitler will be able to accomplish his principal task without a bitter fight. His role is to crush every semblance of organized strength and militancy in the German working class, beginning with the Communist Party, the spearhead of the proletariat, following with the social democracy and the big trade union movement, and ending with the extermination of every other class-conscious proletarian organization. It is already clear from the first news dispatches that the German proletariat, alarmed by the recent events and aroused by the out of the lethargy and the imaginary security into which they were lulled for the past year, has been to resist with all the means at its disposal. When we speak of Hitler's ascension to power, it does not yet mean that the power of fascism has been established in Germany. Before this is definitely accomplished, blood will flow and many sanguinary battles will be fought. But only a blind man could fail to see that Hitler today is in a better position than the Hitler of several months ago. Hitler out of office has only his own forces at his disposal, the quote illegal end quote detachments of black reaction. Hitler in office has the opportunity to strengthen the inchoate mass of demoralized petty bourgeoisie, students, and duped proletarians who compose his forces. Hitler in office has the opportunity of really creating a powerful military force. It is not yet too late to smash Hitler and fascism, and the renegades and scoundrels will speak that way to the still undefeated working class of Germany. The decisive battle is still ahead, but it is now clear beyond dispute that the warnings of the international left opposition, the demand it made that Hitlerism be smashed before it reached the seats of power, were justified 1,000 times over. Had the slogan of the left opposition for a genuine united front of the communists, socialists, and the trade unions been realized in life at the right time many, many months ago, the fascist monster would have been crushed like an eggshell, and the revolutionary movement of the proletariat would have been far ahead on the road to victory. Who bears the responsibility for the rise to power of fascism? It is high time to draw the balance sheet and draw it completely. Above all, in the first place, the leadership of the Yellow Social Democracy. The course embarked upon in August 1914 has been crowned with the triumph of Hitlerism. It is the social democracy which first turned the masses into the slaughterhouse of the World War in the name of the imperialist fatherland. It is in the name of the social democracy that Noska the Bloodhound martyred the Berlin working class during the heroic days of the Spartakan uprising in 1919. It is the social democracy which sent Hersing to slaughter the workers of Central Germany in 1921. It is the social democracy which joined the reaction in 1923 to strangle the rising revolutionary movement in Saxony and Thuringia. It is the social democracy which dragged its followers down to the lowest depths of degradation, giving active or, quote, tolerant, end quote, support to the one reactionary regime after another. It is the social democracy which made possible pruning of the emergency decrees. Wikipedia says Heinrich Brüning lived from 1885 to 1970 and was a German Center Party politician and academic who served as the Chancellor of Germany during the Weimar Republic from 1930 to 1932. A political scientist and Christian social activist, Heinrich Brüning entered politics in the 1920s and was elected to the Reichstag in 1924. In 1930, Heinrich Brüning was appointed interim chancellor just as the Great Depression took hold. Heinrich Brüning's austerity policies and response were unpopular, with most of the Reichstag opposed, so he governed by emergency decrees issued by President Paul von Hindenburg, overriding the Reichstag. This lasted until May 1932, when Heinrich Brüning's land distribution policy offended Hindenburg, who refused to issue any more decrees, and Brüning resigned. After Hitler took power, Heinrich Brüning fled Germany in 1934. Heinrich Brüning eventually settled in the United States. From 1937 to 1952, Heinrich Brüning was professor at Harvard University. Heinrich Brüning returned to Germany in 1951 to teach at the University of Cologne, but again moved to the United States in 1955 and lived out his days in retirement in Vermont. Heinrich Brüning remains a controversial figure in Germany's history, as historians debate whether Heinrich Brüning was the, quote, last bulwark of the Weimar Republic, or, quote, the Republic's undertaker, end quote, or both. Scholars are divided over how much room for maneuver Heinrich Brüning had during the Depression in a period of great political instability. While Heinrich Brüning Intended to protect the Republic's government, his policies, notably his use of emergency powers, also contributed to the gradual demise of the Weimar Republic during his chancellorship. And in terms of the emergency decrees, according to Article 48 of the Weimar Constitution, so the Article 48 of the Constitution of the Weimar Republic of Germany from 1919 to 1933 allowed the Reich President, under certain circumstances, to take emergency measures without the prior consent of the Reichstag. This power came to be understood to include the promulgation of emergency decrees. It was used frequently by Reich President Friedrich Ebert of the Social Democratic Party to deal with both political unrest and economic emergencies. Later, under President Paul von Hindenburg and the presidential cabinets, Article 48 was called on more and more often to bypass a politically fractured parliament and to rule without its consent. After the Nazi Party's rise to power in the early 1930s, the law allowed Chancellor Adolf Hitler, with decrees issued by Hindenburg, to create a totalitarian dictatorship by seemingly legal means. So back to the text. It is the social democracy which made possible pruning of the emergency decrees. It is the social democracy which dragged the workers into the shameful policy of the, quote, lesser evil, end quote, during which it seated in the presidential chair the present patron of Hitler, Paul von Hindenburg, generalissimo of the Kaiser's imperial armies during the war, and candidate of the Social Democratic Iron Front, quote, bulwark of the Republic against fascism, end quote, in 1931. So, the Iron Front was a German paramilitary organization in the Weimar Republic which consisted of Social Democrats, trade unionists, and democratic socialists. The Iron Front's main goal was to defend social democracy against what was seen as anti-democratic totalitarian ideologies on the far right and far left. The Iron Front chiefly opposed the Sturmabteilung, the SA wing of the Nazi Party, and the Anti-Fascistische Action wing of the Communist Party of Germany. Formerly independent, it was intimately associated with the Social Democratic Party of Germany. The three arrows originally designed for the Iron Front became a well-known social democratic symbol representing resistance against monarchism, Nazism, and communism during the parliamentary elections. In November 1932, the three arrows were later adopted by the SPD itself. At every stage of its development, back to the text, at every stage of its development in the past years, the social democracy paved the road for the march to power of fascism by dividing the ranks of the working class, by tying it to the chariot of the bourgeoisie, by bringing demoralization and confusion into the proletariat, by weakening the proletariat physically and morally so that the proletariat's power of resistance to fascism was appreciably lessened. Hitler will reward it for its services with the same contemptuous kick which its Italian colleagues received from Mussolini for their equally invaluable services to fascism. But the social democracy has not been the only force in the ranks of the proletariat that has served the interest of fascism. Without the criminal blundering of the Stalinist leadership, of the Communist International, and of the German Communist Party, the fascist hordes would not today be in the favorable position they actually occupy. The party had the matchless opportunity of mobilizing the masses of the German proletariat around the militant banner of the class struggle. It stubbornly refused to seize the opportunity. The left opposition was the very first to sound the alarm signal that fascism threatened, that it had to be crushed by the united front of all the workers' organizations. We demand that the Communist Party initiate the movement for a real united front of all the workers to smash the brown shirts. Our demands fell on the deaf ears of the Stalinist bureaucracy. The Stalinist bureaucracy operated on the theory of the, quote, third period, end quote, and, quote, social fascism, end quote. No better assistance could have been offered to the fascists on the one hand and the social democratic leaders on the other. Instead of building a solid front with their class brothers in the social democracy, the communists were forced by the Stalinist leadership to enter into an indecent nationalistic competition with the Nazis. The party reconstructed its program to read a, quote, program of national and social emancipation, end quote. It allowed itself to be poisoned by the, quote, national Bolshevism, end quote, and anti-Semitism of the Lieutenant Scheringers. Sorry, 1 second. Anyway, it alienated itself from the socialist methods by its criminal support of the fascist referendum in Prussia. Wikipedia says the 1931 Prussian Landtag referendum was an attempt to prematurely dissolve the sitting session of the Landtag Parliament of the Weimar German state of Prussia. The referendum, which took place according to Article 6 of the 1920 Prussian Constitution, was triggered by a petition launched in the spring of 1931 by the anti-Republican veterans organization Der Stahlhelm. It was supported by several right-wing parties, including the Nazis, as well as by the Communist Party of Germany. Even though 93.9% of those voting on the 9th of August 1931 opted to dissolve the Landtag, the referendum failed because the turnout of 39.2% did not meet the minimum 50% requirement. Back to the text. It alienated itself from the socialist masses by its criminal support of the fascist referendum in Prussia. While the fascists were gaining victory after victory, the party confined the party's self to the sterile, ultimatist policy of demanding that the socialist workers concede in advance the leadership of the Communist Party, or else there would be no united front. The minds of the class-conscious militants were hopelessly befuddled by the irresponsible Stalinist declarations that the Brüning regime was already the victory of fascism, then that the von Papen regime, and finally the von Schleicher regime were all the rule of fascism. In this manner, the vigilance of the proletariat was relaxed, its attention was diverted from the real danger, its strength was not mobilized and consolidated. Unless a genuine, united front of the Communist Party, the Social Democracy, the Socialist Trade Unions, the Reichsbanner, and the Communist Red Front fighters is immediately formed, unless the Communists immediately take the initiative in calling for this united front and compel the German Social Democratic leaders to enter into it, the results will be catastrophic not only for the German working class, but for the working class movement of the whole world, for the Communist International and the Soviet Union. Exclamation point. Reichsbanner Schwarz-Rot-Gold. The Reichsbanner Schwarz-Rot-Gold, which means Reichsbanner red, black, and gold, banner of the Reich, was an organization in Germany during the Weimar period with the goal to defend German parliamentary democracy against internal subversion and extremism from the left and right, and to compel the population to respect and honor the new republic's flag and constitution. It is performed by members of the left-wing Social Democratic Party of Germany, SPD, the center-right to right-wing German Center Party, and the centrist German Democratic Party in February 1924. Organized militarily, the members wanted to ensure nonviolent protection from the enemies of democracy. They refused to arm themselves and were partly made up of veterans. Its name is derived from the flag of Germany, adopted in 1919, the colors of which were associated with the Weimar Republic and liberal German nationalism, and incidentally were also the traditional party colors of its three founding parties, the Center Party black, the Social Democratic Party red, and the Democratic Party gold. While the Reichsbanner was set up as a multi-party organization, it came to be strongly associated with the Social Democratic Party. The headquarters of the Reichsbanner were located in Magdeburg, but it had branches elsewhere. As a pro-democracy paramilitary organization, Reichsbanner's main opponents were the Communist Party of Germany and the Rotfront-Kampfverbund on the far left, and the Nazi Party and their Sturmabteilung SA on the far right. Alongside these two primary opponents, they also combated various reactionary nationalist paramilitary organizations. Following the Nazi takeover, Reichsbanner members played a role in the anti-Nazi resistance. The Reichsbanner was re-established in 1953 as Reichsbanner Schwarz-Rot-Gold Bund Aktiver Demokraten EV as an association for political education. The post-war club is no longer a paramilitary organization but organizes remembrance and educational activities such as seminars and panels. Congruent with its historical makeup, it is officially open for members of all democratic parties but is closely associated with the SPD. It has connections with the memorial to the German resistance, the armed forces, and the police. And the Roter Front Kämpferbund, translated as Alliance of Red Front Fighters or Red Front Fighters League, usually called Rotfront Kämpferbund RFB, was a far-left paramilitary organization affiliated with the Communist Party of Germany during the Weimar Republic. A legally registered association, the RFB was banned in 1929 but continued its work illegally. The first local branches of the RFB were established in July 1924. The RFB's inaugural nationwide meeting was held in February 1925 in Berlin, where Ernst Thälmann was elected to lead the Federal Committee. Die Rote Front, the Red Front, was the newspaper of the RFB. The greeting of Rot Front, English Red Front, while giving a clenched fist salute, gave rise to the expression Rot Front, often used among friends and foes to refer to the organization instead of its full name. The clenched fist, quote, protecting the friend, fighting off the enemy, end quote, was the symbol of the RFB, used on all its insignia and its registered trademark from the 1st of March 1926. In May 1926, during a flag parade, activists used it as a sign of rallying to the movement and as an oath to defend the Soviet Union. Back to the text. A crushing defeat for the working class of Germany means a crushing defeat of the Communist Party, for it is the first organization against which the attack of the brigands of Hitler's shock troop detachments, assisted by the armed forces of the state, will be directed. A mortal blow at the German Communist Party means the breaking of the backbone of the Communist International, and for this calamity we declare that the Stalinist leadership of the International will have been primarily responsible. A lasting triumph of fascism in Germany, furthermore, is inconceivable without an armed attack upon the Soviet Union. Fascism in Germany can maintain itself in the face of chauvinist France only if it becomes the vanguard of the imperialist intervention against the arch-enemy of imperialism, the Soviet Union. The consequences of a fascist triumph are thus, it is easy to see, a far-reaching historical import for the whole ensuing period. That is why the left opposition cries out today more loudly than ever. The Communist International must speak out in the language of Lenin in defense of the international proletarian revolution, in defense of the German working class. It must speak out for the mobilization of the world proletariat to crush the monster of fascism in Germany. It must speak out to say how this is to be done, for it can be done successfully in only one way, by the re-establishment of a Leninist united front of the whole German proletariat. To smash fascism is an obligation and task of the workers everywhere. Upon the class-conscious militants and the communist workers in this country devolves the solemn duty of joining with the left opposition to force the turn in party policy, which is now so absolutely imperative, without which the worst calamities are ahead. Our call to the party to form the united front to smash fascism before it took the governmental helm was not heeded, and the proletariat in Germany and the rest of the world has been set back accordingly. Today again we repeat, it is not too late, but the time to act is now. The fate of the German working class, of the Communist International, of the Soviet Union, of the world revolution hangs in the balance. Okay, so that part was from a piece from 1933, February 4th, titled Opposition's Demand for the United Front is Needed. Wait, hold on. Was there a date at the top of that? Let me make sure. Okay, so that was from February 4th, 1933. The piece titled Opposition's Demand for United Front is need of the hour. Opposition's demand for united front is need of the hour in Germany. Responsibility for rise of fascism must be established. End quote. February 4th, 1933. Part 2, or Section 2. In the Communist Party, a position of more hopeless confusion, irresolution, and hopelessness in the midst of a situation that cries out for clarity. Determination and audacity can hardly be imagined. The parliamentary elections as the axis of the struggle constitute an enormous and treacherous swindle. What is the party doing to counteract it? There is only one thing that it can and must do: organize the genuine united front of all workers' organizations, to launch the general strike, to mobilize the concerted strength of the German proletariat to crush fascism. Is the party doing this? It has not even begun. For to begin, it is imperative to throw overboard all the disastrous policies of yesterday which have rendered the party so impotent in the struggle. In the face of everything that has happened, the party still continues with its pernicious chatter about the, quote, proletarian united front under the leadership of the Communist Party of Germany, end quote, which is the old ultimatist policy. Socialist workers recognize our leadership in advance of, or else there will be no united front. The fascists are already in power, but they have far from consolidated. They have not yet even taken over the whole power, and this circumstance still gives the German proletariat time enough to act decisively enough to destroy the brown-shirted monster. The attainment of this end lies through the united front of the Communist Party, the trade unions, the Social Democratic Party, the Reichsbanner, and the Red Front fighters, which the front must immediately initiate. Which the former must immediately initiate. That's from a piece titled, quote, Hitler Lays New Trap for Workers, end quote, from February 13th, 1933. Section 3. Hitler has taken another big step in the consolidation of exclusive fascist domination of Germany. The Social Democrats, whose policy of toleration to Brüning and von Schleicher and outright support for Hindenburg paved the way to the triumph of Hitler, are being repaid by the latter with a brutal kick in the face. The Social Democrats now have not a single supreme government president or police chief in any part of Prussia. The Berlin correspondent of the New York Sun from February 14th, 1933, points out, with an acumen which the Stalinists could do well to emulate, that, quote, just as the fascist party in Italy gradually took over the civil service and became undistinguishable from the government itself, So the Nazis here hope slowly to undermine and eventually take over the entire government structure, ... The Nazi move is especially notable in police circles, end quote. A 2-year-old child should be able to understand Hitler's tactics. Contrary to the infinitely stupid assertions of the Stalinists concerning the fascist essence of social democracy, which do not improve by repetition in the face of obvious facts, there is a sharp antagonism between the social democracy and fascism. Hitler is trying every single day to prove to the Stalinist blockheads that while the Social Democrats are the principal prop of the, quote, democratic, end quote, form of bourgeois rule, it becomes not merely superfluous but a direct hindrance to the bourgeoisie when it seeks to abolish all democratic forms and institutions and to rule by naked force, by the sword and the torch, in a word, by fascist dictatorship. This is why the fascists attack not only the revolutionary wing of the labor movement, the communists, but also seek to annihilate the points of support of the social democracy. If the eloquent experiences of Italian fascism were not sufficient to make this clear, the first couple of weeks of Hitler as Chancellor should serve to enlighten even the most backward. But the Stalinist leaders of the Communist Party continue with incredible obstinacy to prattle about, quote, social fascism, end quote, and the, quote, united front from below, end quote. The crucial hour demands the extra-parliamentary mobilization of the whole German proletariat to crush fascism before fascism entrenches itself too solidly. And this is just where the impotence of the official party and the official party's leadership shows itself so strikingly. Where is the movement for the assembling of the factory councils and the unemployed on a national scale to prepare for the general strike of all the workers? Where is the organized movement of the workers to defend themselves against the growing encroachments of the brown-shirted bandits? The only road for the German working class at the present moment is the united front of all the working class organizations. The party bureaucracy stands in the way of the united front. It is sacrificing the interests of the German working class, of the world revolution, of the Communist International for the sake of preserving the theory of infallibility of the Stalinist leadership, of preserving the bureaucratic ultimatist formula of the, quote, united front from below, end quote, which divides socialists from communist workers instead of uniting them. We say openly, the refusal to mobilize the genuine united front of all the workers' organizations immediately is downright treason to the German proletariat. Now is the time. The Stalinists are playing with the situation. Tomorrow the individual workers who have been cut down by the fascist thugs will be multiplied 1,000 times, and under conditions not half so favorable to the workers of Germany as are the conditions of struggle at the present time. The failure to organize the united front is only another way of capitulating to fascism without a serious struggle. Hitler is well aware of this. Hitler knows his road and he follows it relentlessly. The working class must understand its own position and act resolutely too. It is all-powerful and invincible if it only unites its arms and strikes with determination. Those who stand in the way of this unity will bear a horrible responsibility for the impending catastrophe. Let the communist workers reflect and act speedily. Let them demand an immediate reckoning from the self-satisfied bureaucrats who remain passive while the enemy prepares its death blow. Quote, This is from a piece titled, Hitler is consolidating the power of fascism in Germany. Whoever blocks the Workers' United Front is a traitor. A piece from February 15th, 1933. Part 4. Berlin is an armed camp, with armored cars and 18,000 rifle-armed police concentrated heavily in the working-class quarters. A new decree has been issued providing for heavy penalties against those who, quote, give false information for foreign publications, end quote, as well as against those who print such, quote, false, end quote, information in the German press. The Rote Fahne, central organ of the German Communist Party, which appeared for one day after its previous suspension, has had its printing plant confiscated and in addition has been suspended by the government until April 15th. An edition of the paper printed in Leipzig was confiscated, together with the truck that carried the copies to Berlin. All the socialist papers in East Prussia have been suppressed. Even liberal journals have been ordered suspended. A mass meeting of the Social Democratic Party to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the death of Karl Marx was dispersed by police. All these measures are part of a monstrous frame-up concocted by the fascist butchers in control of the government. a fire of incendiary origin in the Reichstag building is being used as the pretext for delivering a mortal blow to the Communist Party. Anybody who is even superficially acquainted with the theories and practices of the Communist Party is sufficiently aware that arson is not in its program. That is a method of fighting practiced almost exclusively by the fascists. In the present instance, the frame-up is so flagrant that even the American correspondents in Berlin have not failed to comment adversely upon Hitler's crude attempt to crush the Communist Party as a result of it. Will the Communist Party take up the challenge? It would be criminal to conceal the fact that with its present policy, the party has proved impotent in the face of Hitler's murderous advance. The working class has not been mobilized either directly under its banner or under the banner of a united front movement initiated by the communists. It is a fact which we repeat here. In his march to power in Italy, Mussolini encountered a far more energetic, militant, sanguinary resistance on the part of the proletariat than Hitler has thus far encountered in Germany, where the working class movement is far stronger than it ever was in Italy, where the working class does not play its role in the background of a defeat, as in Italy, where the Communist Party is 10 times as strong as it was in Italy in 1922. The twilight hour has been reached. The next stroke of the clock can still be controlled by the masses. Either it will strike the doom of the working class for a decade or more to come, or it will strike the beginning of the end of fascism. The whole world's situation hinges around the outcome of the terrible drama now being enacted before our eyes. The fate of the German proletariat hangs in the balance. With it is involved the fate of the whole communist international. With it is also involved the fate of the workers' the fate of the workers' fatherland, the Soviet Union. And in face of this, the leader of the world's proletariat, the Communist International, is as silent as a tombstone. In face of the situation, the best disciple of Lenin, Joseph Stalin, is as silent as a tombstone. In face of the dreadful catastrophe which threatens, the party leaders continue to babble philosophically about the progress of the united front from below, as if they had months and years at their disposal in which to mobilize the German proletariat for the decisive battle which is impending. Fascism has put the noose around the neck of the Communist Party. It has aimed its knife at the heart of the German working class. Whoever is silent at a time like this, whoever relegates the decisive German situation to the background of second and third-rate consequence, is drugging the proletariat and helping to prepare it for the slaughter. Whoever stands in the way of the genuine united front, from organization to organization, Communist Party, Social Democracy, trade unions, Reichsbanner, Red Front, is betraying the working class. Communist workers, militants everywhere, it is not yet too late. The masses await only the signal for action. The Communist Party must give this signal. It must be aroused out of its awful lethargy and impotence. It must put a stop to the self-deceptive jabbering about the, united front from below, which, unites, only the communists and their supporters, and set in motion the Leninist united front of all the workers to decimate the fascist hydra. Tomorrow may see the materialization of Hitler's demand that, heads roll in the dirt, Then the miserable, self-criticism, practiced by Stalinism after each defeat will be of little avail. It is today that the party must change its disastrous course. It is now that it must strike for the united front, which, in turn, will strike the dagger from the hands of fascism, and fascism from the seats of power. And that was from a piece titled Fascist Frame Up the Communist Party, The Life and Death Question, Leninist United Front in Germany or Disaster. It's from March 1st, 1933. Section 5. Every day brings the report of a new blow dealt the German working class movement by the Hitler regime. The Times reports that communist arrests included the entire executive committee of the party in Berlin and Reichstag deputies and party executives elsewhere, In Berlin alone, there are more than 300 communists held. Raids for the apprehension of communist militants and officials are now the order of the day. The communist and socialist press, more than 100 papers in all, remain suppressed, and the fascist swastika still waves from the Karl Liebknecht house. News decrees signed by, Comrade von Hindenburg, erstwhile presidential candidate for the social democracy, provide for the most rigorous penalties against revolutionary or militant working class activity. The science of the Communist International and the German situation, its criminal failure to speak out plainly, has become a notorious international scandal of dreadful significance. The world movement of the proletariat is at stake. In Germany, the fate of the Soviet Union is involved. Between fascism in Germany and the worker state, there can exist only an irreconcilable antagonism which in the long run will be settled only by force of arms. This antagonism must not only not be concealed, it must be openly proclaimed to the workers of the world so that they may know how the situation stands and what the attitude of the Soviet Union really is. Instead of such a clear proclamation, we see disquieting signs of the contrary. Walter Duranty, the Moscow correspondent of the New York Times, now in Berlin, cables his paper as follows. On March 2nd, 1933, quote, while it doubtless would be an exaggeration to say, as some of Chancellor Hitler's close associates do, that, quote, the Soviet Union wants a Hitlerite Germany because the Soviet Union knows that would be a strong Germany, which the Soviet Union wants, end quote, it is beyond question that Moscow would welcome even a 100% Hitler regime on the grounds that it would conjure away the nightmare that has harassed the sleep of Soviet statesmen for the past 5 years, namely an anti-Bolshevist European coalition or a, quote, holy war against the Red Peril, end quote. Moscow already has reasons to be gratified over the effect of Herr Hitler's rise to power on France and Poland, but that is only one aspect of the case. Of greater practical interest is the recent agreement concluded by the Deutsche Bank and the Diskonto Gesellschaft and the Dresdner Bank to provide $500 million in new credits to the Soviet Union, ... end quote. The continuation of, quote, normal business relations, end quote, with Germany under Hitler, right at the moment when the decisive battle is imminent, a battle on whose outcome depends the next decade or more of the world's development, as if nothing unusual was happening, as if the Soviet Union were not concerned with what government was established in Germany, means little short of leaving the German proletariat to fend for itself, leaving the German proletariat in the lurch, without the moral, and when necessary, the material assistance of the worker state. To this moment, the world remains unaware of the program of the Communist Party. We put the question again. Does the Communist Party and the Communist Party's leadership really intend to organize the resistance of the proletariat to fascism? Or does the Communist Party intend to capitulate without a struggle on the half-formed or fully conscious theory that it is hopeless to fight or that fascism will soon collapse and give way to Bolshevism? Are the party leaders preparing for the final struggle or giving up the situation as hopeless? The left opposition does not consider the situation hopeless. The left opposition knows very well, and the newspaper reports to the humiliation of the communist movement confirm it, that the Austrian and Scandinavian borders are being passed by an increasing number of communist officials and leaders from Germany. For such capitulators who are saving their hides, a revolutionist can have nothing but a contempt and hatred. Of them, Trotsky wrote more than a year ago, quote, without a victory over the social democracy, we cannot battle against fascism, end quote. Say such terrible revolutionists, and for this reason, they get their passports ready. Worker communists, you are hundreds of thousands, millions. You cannot leave for any place. There are not enough passports for you. Should fascism come to power, fascism will ride over your skull and spines like a terrific tank. Your salvation lies in merciless struggle, and only a fighting unity with the social democratic workers can bring victory. Make haste, worker communists. You have very little time left, end quote. Trotsky. Very little time left. Every hour counts. The socialist leaders, the traitors to the proletariat, would not act of their own accord. The communist leaders must be forced out of their criminal passivity. They must be forced to put an end to this light-minded juggling with the fate of the German proletariat. There is no retreat. All that is left is mortal combat, or annihilation. That was from, quote, No Retreat, Struggle or Annihilation. Editor's note. In fact, the Communist Party did not attempt to fight the fascists in Germany. Like the Social Democratic Party, the Communist Party slunk into a needless grave. Stalin had as early as 1931 put it to his German lieutenant, Heinz Neumann, who would be shot in 1937, quote, "If Hitler comes to power in Germany, won't he keep them busy in the West while we get on with the building of socialism in Russia?" End quote. Joseph Stalin. Wikipedia says that Heinz Neumann lived from 1902 to 1937 and was a German politician from the Communist Party and a journalist. He was a member of the Communist International, editor-in-chief of the party newspaper Die Rote Fahne, and a member of the Reichstag. He was one of the many victims to Stalin's Great Purge. What a sad and shameful life. The end. Thanks for listening.